So we've talked about this phenomenon before, but we're really going to focus on just one muscle now. We're going to focus on the QL, the quadratus lumborum. So it does attach to the lumbar spine, as the name indicates. Also the rib, iliac crest. It's a stabilizer, a lumbopelvic stabilizer. What we'll see commonly is it laterally flexes the spine, so left side here. Very tight, hypertonic, shortened, which can cause damage on the right side. So maybe your pain is in the right QL. What this will also do is not just laterally flex, but it will open up the front of the rib cage on the left. So think about it as pulling on the back. It's like a seesaw. So the front left opens up. So that psoas muscle. It's another major stabilizer, right? Comes into that top position. That hip turns out on the left side. Glute max is dominant on the left. So a lot of people just have this issue on both sides, but one side tends to be more hypertonic. So we got the twist as well as a front to back issue. So on the left side, that front of the rib cage pulls up. This QL tightens, it's pulling down. And yes, there's also a little bit of a distortion. It'll contract like that. So that can be very tight. That QL itself can generate pain. It can restrict your movements and your rotations when you're squatting, hinging, all that good stuff we're trying to do in foundation training and strength training that can really throw us off. So getting that to release, strengthening the right, balancing out that tension will help the joints and help prevent injury. Because yeah, even that muscle alone being short and tight, pulling, the little right QL getting overstretched, eventually can tear or tendinopathy can occur just from simple motion. It doesn't have to be even you lifting something or just twisting crazy. It could just be slowly damaging over time. I call that the light bulb effect. The light bulb slowly dimming, it's dimming, and then you don't even know how bad it's gotten because you're just so used to it. So this is a simple stretch we can do. And our workout today workout this week is a lot of good moves to just open up this area. So even before I grab the kettlebell, in foundation training, we have this concept of before we decompress, like all these moves like the sphere of tension, we're trying to get wide before we get tall. Because a lot of people think, bring your shoulders back and down. And when we do that, we pull the shoulder blades back and down. That QL, it's even more tight. We flare the ribs open. We don't want the front open. We want to close the chain in the front. That's why we do things like the sphere of tension to help work against that rib flare. Breathe in, tighten the front of the neck, tighten the abdominals, and trying to breathe wide. Open up laterally this area here. Like it's very restricted in a lot of people. Breathe that wide before I can start getting tall. Driving my heels to the ground, lengthening my neck. My wife was asking me, why don't you just tell me, lengthen my neck? Well, the shoulders need to come down as well. So our cue is, lemons in the armpits, squeeze. We're not saying retract. Big difference. So just straight down, breathing wide, then getting tall. This alone, you should be able to feel your QLs. You might feel the left more than the right. I'm not saying that's everybody, but it's very common because of our imbalance of the diaphragm left to right. A lot of other videos I've talked about the psoas today. I'm just going to focus mainly on that QL. So simply, if it's really flared up, you don't want to do anything else, just breathe. Just breathe, right? Inhaling, trying to control that. You notice on the inhale, this loves to lift up, flare open, the pelvis spirals forward. So we can kind of work against that with this little curtsy stretch here too. Let me angle this down so you can see what my feet are doing. So maybe this is a little heavy, it's 45, but I like a little bit of weight. So I'm going in the right hand, and I'm thinking tripod of the foot, maybe even set up for a narrow standing decompression, those shoulders level. Then I'm concentrating on not flaring those ribs, tightening that stomach, big and broad in that lower rib cage area. Just make a little fist, do a little curl, flex the other foot behind you, allowing my pelvis to drop where that QL attaches to that iliac crest. So want the iliac crest to drop towards the floor. Tightening that stomach because we don't want to be a lazy, sloppy side bend here. Stiff and lengthen so we can really focus that QL. As I lean to the right, I can feel it right there. That T12 rib and below, down to that iliac crest. I can kind of reach here if I want to, but I feel like that adds to that stretch. Now bring that foot behind also helps untorque the pelvis, allows my ilium to roll back close and hug the sacrum. So we're lengthening that QL, and we're forcing it to engage. Because we don't want to just stretch mindlessly. We want to use it. Eccentric contraction, bringing it to length, reminding it where it's supposed to be. Yes, we can do this on the other side, and I'll demonstrate this way. What I'll say before I turn around, just so in case you can't hear me, is I still want to go to the right more. Because even though it's my left hand, going to the right, I'm still stretching out the left QL. But you feel it out. Don't just take my word on it. Feel what feels tight, restricted, not pain. You feel like, ooh, binding, and you're working against that binding and that restriction. So I'll show from this way. Now it's in my left hand. So you can hear I'm flaring my lats, trying to get big and broad. Don't just be lazy here. Drive your feet in the ground, get wide, get tall. Do a little flex. Drop the pelvis on the right. Still gonna go to the right. Right there, I feel that QL stretch. Here, I don't feel much at all, so that's one clue. If you're going on the right, you're stretching the left now, and you're feeling that right feels good. Felt the binding on the left. Just focus mainly on what I was doing. It was more, even just doing that with the opposite hand, I was going to the right again. Land that left foot, right foot behind. Now I'm just going to focus on more to the right. Good. Another really good move, and I got to give a shout out to Joe Daniels Kettlebell for inventing this, but it goes along well with foundation training, and especially opening up that area. Even if we don't have a kettlebell, we can lock in like this. You can go sphere of tension. It's just nice because then we can think about rolling those hips in, or inward anchor. But that forearm, just along the front of the hip, where that hip flexor runs, really helps. So we're gonna go into a squat. We call this kind of like a king squat. We squat and pull into the hinge and pull into the squat. The kettlebell just helps. And we call this the somersault squat because it's almost like you're about to do a somersault. And a lot of people have this strange idea of, well, I'm not supposed to be rounded, right? But a little bit of rounding, especially when we're lifting, from the mid-back, you feel it's very stiff. It's easy if I go from the low back, right? But if I try to pull the front of the rib cage down, and just micro bend from my mid-back, oh, I feel so much binding. It's so stiff, it's so locked up. You'll feel that QL resisting that. So if we're just collapsed and I bend, it's easy, right? But I'm not really motioning, I'm not getting that mobility from that mid-back. That's why things like foam rollers people get relief from, because they're able to get that bend, focus that bend in the thoracic area versus just bending at the low back. So a lot of people are standing, they don't realize how rounded they are, because they're here. They're like, look, I look good. Look at my belly sticking out. But their head's back, so they think they have good posture, but they're just feeding into that QL tightness, which causes so many things, like the glutes being tight and the hips externally rotating, that all breaks down together, right? But again, let's not get too off track with that one. Finish with this move, which is one of our workouts for today. We've got other stuff this week we're hitting, but I want to keep this video short. So again, let me see if I can get low enough. I'm gonna lock in there, just one hand over the other, grabbing that kettlebell. First I just pretty much do a deadlift, and I like heavier weight than this, just because I want it to help pull me down. So I'm locking those forearms in. Just like in foundation training where I just have a subtle bend in the elbow. I don't want a lot of bend. I'm pressing that kettlebell down. Here's the side view. And I'm just going into a squat. My forearms locked, they stay right there. And then we're hinging. I'm rolling the hips in towards each other. And this is where you'll feel that stretch. Try to almost take out all the bend. We just have that subtle bend left. I'm opening up the mid-back here. Going down. If I have a heavier weight, I can usually get the weight all the way to the ground. Just usually takes a few reps. Right here, I can feel that mid-back being pried open, that QL being stretched. And it helps to have the anatomy in mind. It's not so much about the squat here. This will help get some good hip mobility. I can already tell I'm deeper. This is where it's at. Your quads will be on fire during this. We're stretching that hamstring out. Butt's going up and back. Trying to take out most of that knee bend. So even if you're in a lot of pain, this is a good one. I'll just switch hands here. I feel like it hits one hip over the other a little bit differently. Oh, yeah, usually 10 of these. Kill those quads. There we go, I was able to tap. And I will get some movement right in that. Show you on the model area where everyone's really stuck. Here. This is where we want to, because you look at the side, that's normal. Most people go into here. It's hyperextension. The area's caved in, and the QL is part of that. Not bending from the low back, we're trying to do a mini crunch. A little bit of rounding, you'll feel opening up with flexion, but also getting wide. So that breath is really important with this somersault squat, if you want to look it up. Oh. The quads, whew. Hamstrings get a nice stretch, but the quad is working, it's burning. Now it should help that breath, it should feel good after. Much easier. To fill up, I call it filling up the canister. Pressurizing that soda can. Most people, we breathe from our shoulders. We accessory breathe, we feed into that QL with every breath. Most repetitive thing you do, right? So we don't want to do this with the breath. We don't want to raise the shoulders. We don't want to engage there. We're trying to close down the front of the body. That sphere of tension helps a lot. Other thing we've been focusing on, we've been doing the 65 plus program. They use a lot of props. So last week, or this Monday, we were doing a press down with a broomstick handle or a foam roller like this, where I'm engaging the lats, pressing down, and the lats start working if we add just a tiny bit of rounding from the mid-back. So I'm drawing my head back, pull that chin in, big chest, but also squeezing the abs in, bringing that pubic bone behind us as well to allow the hips to spiral, and then driving down. You can even go into your founder, but even just getting that decompression stance and breathing. Help break apart all those restrictions in our low back. Really help. And that's my pattern, especially. Ribs love to flare, belly comes out. Core's not working. Can't. You want it nice and short and tight here. All right? You'll look better too. Nobody wants to have the beer belly, right? All right, guys, hopefully that visual helps you attack this workout today. We had somersault squat, we had Russian twists, and then just some power snatches with the kettlebell just to explore that newfound mobility. But go back to that first stretch too. If you still notice that, oh, it's hard to to do some of the movements, whether it's the Russian twist or whatever. Loosen up that QL, it's gonna feel a lot more fluid. You won't feel so bound up and you won't hurt after.